The castle isn't the only place haunted on Beaver's campus. Hines Hall has a ghost of its own named Max. Max is said to be the spirit of a man once buried in the ground that Hines Hall now stands on. The land was a cemetery at one time. In 1905, William Welsh Harrison wanted to expand his rolling lawn, so he bought a cemetery adjacent to the property. After some court battles, Harrison was given permission to dig up the bodies and have them moved elsewhere. Around 250 bodies were relocated. Some of the deceased had been buried for over 100 years. Many of the bodies were reinterred in Hillside Cemetery in Abington, Pennsylvania. Max may not have liked the move and decided to stay behind to torment the women of Hines Hall. According to the legend, Max is very particular about the people he haunts. He only visits rooms with two women, one with blonde hair and one with brown hair. Also, one of the women is tall and one is short. Heather Lindsley describes one of the hauntings attributed to Max.
One of the roommates had been gone off campus, and the other one was visiting one of her friends in another room on the hall. And when she got back to her room, the radio was on. It was on CD mode, and there was no CD in the stereo, but there was a song playing that had been on the CD that was lying on her desk.
The only Beaver College legend with no connection to the Harrison family takes place in Dilworth Hall.
Being a former resident of Dilworth Hall, I've heard one specific story that has freaked everybody out. According to the story, there was a male student who had lived on the third floor and ran down the hall and jumped out the window. And according to the story, around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, if you leave your room, you can see the man running down the hall and jumping out the window.
Beaver College is rich with legend and lore about apparitions visiting the campus. Are the Harrisons still wandering around their former home? Do ghosts really visit the castle dorms? Are these specters to be feared?
Although we have many ghost stories here at Beaver College, all of our ghosts are known to be relatively benign, where none of them have caused any physical injuries.
Five years ago, I had an experience of which I have never spoken before.
In 1919, during a Sunday sermon at the Grace Baptist Church in Philadelphia, Dr. Russell Herman Conwell revealed the details of a shocking encounter he experienced 5 years earlier. The event made headlines around the country. Dr. Russell Conwell, pastor of the largest Baptist church in the United States, the founder of Temple University, and a world-renowned lecturer, was not the type of man you would expect to speak of encounters with the dead. However, in 1919, Dr. Conwell's accounts of visits from his deceased wife, Sarah, caused a national sensation. Conwell married Miss Sarah Sanborn of Newtown Center, Massachusetts, in 1874. Their years together were happy, but came to an end when Sarah died in October 1910. Dr. Conwell was now alone, suffering from the death of yet another loved one. His first wife, Jenny, died after only 7 years of marriage. Tragedy hit home again when their daughter, Agnes, died at a young age. Some scholars of the supernatural felt the unfortunate events in Dr. Conwell's life led to his encounters with Sarah. Conwell felt otherwise.
There is no doubt in my mind that we live surrounded by an invisible world of spirit. They are cognizant of our acts and thoughts, and can, under certain conditions, communicate with us.
Dr. Conwell detailed his wife's first visit for George Knox McCain, a reporter for the Brooklyn Daily Eagle. It was early in the morning. Day was breaking, and his bedroom was in part light. As he opened his eyes, he saw a figure seated on the edge of his bed, at the foot where Mrs. Conwell had sat when he was ill or indisposed. He was startled, and on looking closer, saw that it really was his wife. She was smiling at him across the bed. He regarded the apparition intensely for an instant, and then with the conviction that he was the victim of an illusion, or that his senses were playing him false, he turned on his pillow and closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, the vision persisted. He raised himself on his elbow, and for the first time noticed that the lips were moving as though speaking, but he could detect no sound. After a moment or so, he asked,
"Is that you, Sarah?"
He is uncertain as to the answer. The figure persisted for a few moments without change. He began to concentrate on the message the spirit was uttering. Little by little, the voice became faintly audible and finally became fairly distinct. Then suddenly, the form disappeared. Sarah made several visits to her husband. During the second visit, Sarah told her husband,
"Why not dispose of all the jewelry in the vault in the same way?"
This question is extraordinary because the jewelry that Sarah was speaking of was not placed in the bank until after her death. Dr. Conwell deposited many of his wife's rings, brooches, and necklaces in the bank for safekeeping. However, before doing so, he gave several pieces of her jewelry to relatives as mementos. Dr. Conwell's wife was telling him to dispose of the jewelry in the bank in the same way. Sarah helped her husband locate the Civil War discharge papers that he had not seen for years.
She told me that they were in a black lacquered box behind the third shelf of the bookcase in my library. I got up immediately and found them where she had said they would be. I never even remember having seen this lacquered box, and she'd apparently put them there.
The night before Sarah's final visit, Dr. Conwell had a servant hide a gold pencil somewhere in the house. He wanted to test the apparition.
Show me where the pencil's hidden.
Are you convinced?
From that day to this, which has been 5 years ago now, I have not seen her, but I have been conscious of her presence near me.
"6 years later, Dr. Conwell died. He and Sarah now lay together in Founder's Garden at Temple University.